Are we live? Well, why didn't you tell me?
No, just right now.
Oh, okay.
Not while you were
Oh,
speaking.
about COVID.
That's why I said I'm going live.
Blasphemy.
No.
So we're on? We're live, we're recording?
Yes. I think Stewart needs to join, Joe.
Okay.
And then Mayor, we also have Howard Benavides,
Okay.
in case you guys have questions
Oh, okay.
on the signage.
Okay. Well, I see it's 7 o'clock, so we best get on our way here. Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's January 14th, 2021, and we're underway at 7 p.m. And first up on our agenda is our invocation. And tonight, Councilmember Fredericks is going to be doing the invocation for us, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and Texas flag. So if you please stand for the pledges and invocation.
Loving and gracious God, we thank you today for all your blessings upon this community. We ask that you bless all that live and work here abundantly, and that we continue to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations tonight, and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Give us insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good. Dear Lord, grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Before we move on with the agenda, I'd just like to let everybody know that's out there in our vast audience on YouTube, or is it Facebook or YouTube? YouTube. That we hit another technology milestone here. For several years, we've contemplated doing away with paper packets for the council and go with laptops. And so we finally made the leap and went to, we have iPad Pros for everybody, and we even have Apple Pencils. So we're really high tech on this stuff, but thanks to our city administrator, Marion Mendoza, and our city secretary, Selena Perez, they reminded me of the need for these. They've been wanting to go this route, and we were able to use the COVID money for this, and that was part of the funding that we received. So give kudos to Marion and Selena, especially Selena, because she programmed all of them and put all the apps on there, and by golly, it appears that it's working. So congratulations. Okay, that being said, we'll scroll down on the agenda here, but I'm kind of old school, so I still have my hard copy of the agenda itself, but I refrained from doing the backup information. I'm going to try and get through this. As a forward-thinking septuagenarian, I figured I might as well jump in whole hog with everybody else. But we have next up on our agenda, citizens to be heard. So are any of those people? No? Okay, we can go past that and then go to our consent agenda. And our consent agenda items tonight are 3 through 6. And for those of you that don't know, a consent agenda is merely a grouping together of several agenda items that the staff and I feel are fairly routine city business. They're typically handled under the consent agenda, and the thought process is to expedite the meeting and have multiple items approved at the same time. However, the council does have the option of asking questions if one can be answered quickly, we'll address the question. Otherwise, they can request to have that item pulled, and it'll be dropped down for individual consideration. So at this time, I'll ask on consent agenda items 3 through 6, are there any questions or requests to pull an item?
I have a question, Mayor.
Okay.
It's on number 6. I guess this is for Marion. You're going to be if we approve this, you're going to be the Public Information Coordinator. Is Andrea still the PIO?
Yeah, Selena's going to be.
I mean, the city secretary, Selena, I'm sorry.
Selena.
Okay, is Andrea still going to be the
Yes.
actual PIO?
Yes, this is strictly for
For the coordinator?
Yeah,
Okay.
for taking care of all the public information.
And then Andrea will still address the public?
Oh, yes.
All right, because she does a really good job with that.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had, Mayor.
Anybody else? No request to pull anything? Then I would look for a motion to approve consent agenda items 3 through 6. A motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve consent agenda items 3 through 6.
We have a motion from Buys. We have a second.
Second.
Second from Fredericks. No discussion being asked for. We'll just call the question. All in favor of approving consent agenda items 3 through 6, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Consent agenda items 3 through 6 are approved. That takes us next up to a presentation tonight. And we're glad to have Joe Dumanel, fellow Aggie, who is on the board of directors of the Trinity Glen Rose Groundwater Conservation District. And Marion and I talked to Joe several weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
And just the information he gave us was pretty informative, and we decided to have him here as a guest and give us a presentation. Joe used to work with us through our city engineer. He was our floodplain administrator with LMB Engineering. That was quite a few years ago.
I left there in 2015. So
2015, I was going to say about 5 years ago. Anyway, Joe, we're glad to have you. And for those of you that do not know, Trinity Glen Rose Groundwater Conservation District now has an office in Old Town on Old Bandera at Scenic Loop in that new building next to the shops at Old Town. So, Joe, you have your PowerPoint?
And we hope to have a grand opening here sometime soon, and we'll be sure to.
Oh,
send everything.
champagne and cookies. Well, that's a guaranteed draw for council.
We'll leave it though.
Maybe not the champagne, I'm just joking about that. I don't want to give people the wrong idea. Soda pop and cupcakes, it's always a draw.
But I just want to assure you, Mayor, that I'm not invoicing the city for this presentation.
Okay, good. Craig, would you be so kind as to flip that switch there behind you, and we'll get a little more. There you go. Okay, Joe, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's really my pleasure to be here, and I'm very pleased that I was offered the opportunity to be in person with you today. I'm so damn tired of Zoom meetings. Excuse my language, but I'm so tired of Zoom meetings. I sat through 4 hours of them today already.
Can we make sure his mic's on?
Yeah, if he pulls it closer, it's on.
Is it?
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Better?
Yeah.
But as Mayor said, I was recently re-elected to the Board of Directors for the Trinity Glen Rose Groundwater Conservation District. I have been a board member since 2011. So this, I guess, is my third term, I think, on the board. We have 4-year terms. We canvassed votes and all that stuff, and I was actually sworn in on November the 19th. But you know, one thing that amazed me was I was very last, at least probably on your ballot and others. Our position was very last on most all the ballots. Yet over 31,000 votes were cast for this position. And I was really amazed how competitive the race was in the end. So, but I'm very happy to have been given the opportunity to serve in it again. And I just want to spend a little time today talking to you a little bit about the district. Joining me today is George Wisman, our general manager. He's our general manager. He actually occupies that office down in Old Town. And we've got online joining us Dr. Stuart Birnbaum, who we just swore in as District 1 Director this morning. He's replacing a member that had to resign due to relocation of address. Stewart's online, and he is a resident of Helotes. And as the mayor said, he served on the council here for at some point in the past, I'm not sure what years, but he has a very distinguished academia career, and we're very happy to have his expertise on our board. Next slide there. Many of you are familiar with the Edwards aquifer. It's one of only 9 major aquifers. There is there are 9 major aquifers, not 7. And if you look real hard in the center of the slide, you'll see the little blue streak. That's the Edwards. Now, if you look in the green, stretching from North Texas all the way to Southwest Texas, is the Trinity aquifer. It's usually divided into upper, middle, and lower Trinity. The middle Trinity being where most of the water production is being produced out of, and it's where we are in the middle Trinity. Its major difference between the Trinity and the Edwards is the Edwards is like one big pool underground, where a couple of wells like J17 can measure the level for the entire aquifer. Our Trinity is very segmented, and it recharges much differently and very much slower than the Edwards. It's one of the most extensive and highly used groundwater resources in Texas. It's primarily used for municipalities. You can go ahead. It's primarily used for municipalities, but it's also used for irrigation, livestock, and other domestic purposes. It's experienced some of the most severe reductions in water levels throughout the state. However, that's being reversed now because of municipalities adopting and enforcing good conservation practices. Just to give you a little comparison, just so you can understand, the outcrop area obviously is the recharge area. You can see the difference between the Edwards and the Trinity. The subsurface area for the Trinity is much larger than the Edwards. So, I mean, we don't have near as much area to recharge as the Edwards does. So it's a little bit different mechanism. But they interact with each other, and that's where we spend most of our time and money is understanding how they interact. I represent District 2, of which District 2, Helotes is in both District 2 and District 1. So that's why Dr. Stuart Bermond is also your representative for some of the citizens of Helotes, and I represent the others. The Trinity Glen Rose was established in 2001 by House Bill 2005, and then it was ratified by the voters in 2002. And it's all of Bexar County north of 1604, as you can see, and it includes part of Kendall County and Comal County, specifically those parts of Kendall County, Farrell's Ranch, that are in Kendall and Comal County. And that was voted on by the City of Farrell's Ranch in 2004. Now, we do anticipate having to redistrict based on the latest census, just because of as you can see, District 1, because of Alamo Ranch and the density of population, is the largest, District 2 is the largest geographic area, but it includes Government Canyon and areas that are not going to be developed. So, but we'll have to look at the census and decide whether we have to redistrict here shortly. Next slide. I'm going to give you a snapshot. This is a snapshot of the wells, Trinity wells in and around Helotes. At least those that were in the Texas Water Development database. Now, anything drilled prior to 2000 doesn't necessarily reflect here, but that's one of our jobs, is to go out and find all those active wells, at least get them identified so we know where they're at. Not so we can charge them money or do anything like that, just so we know where they're at. But more importantly, we want to locate abandoned wells so that we can either plug or cap them so that they contamination to the other water resource. Next slide. Groundwater district is basically a unit of government, and it's created by the Texas legislature and ratified by the voters. So our rules come from the Texas legislature. And it's been used, the groundwater district has been used since 1949 as the state's preferred method of managing groundwater. This makes sense since the demographics and uses of this valuable resource are very significantly throughout the 254 counties throughout Texas. There are about 100 GCDs, groundwater districts, in existence in Texas. We're not all uniformly created. Most of us belong to an organization called the Texas Alliance of Groundwater Districts, and that helps us to get together, much like the TML for city governments and TPWA for public works. It allows us to share ideas and develop or influence programs for the management, conservation, protection, and development of groundwater. Our overall government authority is Chapter 36 of the Water Code. Now, each GCD, like our House Bill 2005, has our specific enabling legislation. So we go first to our enabling legislation, and then we go to our ultimate final thing is Chapter 36 to determine what we can and can't do as far as managing the groundwater. We are a fee-based district. There are other districts. The closest one that I can think of is Cow Creek Groundwater District in Kendall County, which is ad valorem tax. We are strictly based on production fees. And our annual revenue is roughly $420,000 a year.
In a good year.
In a good year, yes. And believe it or not, a good year is a wet year. We actually produce more in a wet year than we do in a dry year. And the reason for that is many of our major producers of wells are capped by water level. So when the water level gets to a certain level, they are prohibited from pumping and distributing waters. Do this through education, collaboration with entities like the City of Helotes, and we like to promote smart use of this precious resource, especially during times of drought or low rainfall like we had in 2020. Our other job is to protect the wells from contamination. We've got a robust program to try to find areas where there's potential contamination, and again, educating our citizens to make sure that we keep those wells from being contaminated, and of course, ultimately preserve this resource for our future generations. We just recently completed and approved our 5-year management plan. We have to redo that every 5 years. It's quite an extensive effort because it involves quite a bit of back and forth with the Texas Water Development Board, and it's a good tool because it allows us to figure out what we have to do to effectively meet the needs of the nearly 235,000 people that live within the district. And the major parts of our management plan for this year is it deals with regulating water well drilling, production and maintenance, collecting and analyzing well water and aquifer data, continuing water conservation and pollution prevention programs, and working with governmental entities like Helotes to ensure the plan's implementation. We also actively participate with GMA Groundwater Management Area Number 9, which is a conglomeration of 9 groundwater districts.
In the hill country.
In the hill country. They, for regional planning purposes, and that's right now the effort is again to produce the desired future conditions update that is required to be submitted to the Texas Water Development Board for them to include in their overall water plan for the state of Texas. We always are evaluating our district rules to make sure that we are up to date with any changes in the Texas legislature. And obviously the Texas legislature has just met, and we're already hearing words of some bills that may be introduced. So we're paying close attention to those to see how it's going to affect our business and also the resource of the groundwater district. And most importantly, we're in the process of developing a quantitative permits process for our larger producers. And I think we really need to do this because we just examined our exempt well production numbers, and we need to make sure that we really know exactly where we fit as far as the desired future condition and our maximum allowable groundwater. There's no magic. There's no Gestapo that's going to really come down and say, turn off all the water. But we just want to make sure that we're monitoring and managing it as best we can. And then the last thing, it really doesn't affect citizens of Helotes too much, but it does affect the eastern part of my district. We're participating in the Sentinel Landscape Program. It's a federal, state, and local entities are collaborating for conservation issues, basically to preserve the military mission at Camp Stanley and Camp Bullis, and to promote overall shared conservation. It's a pretty extensive effort, and I'm proud that we're part of it. As the mayor said, we recently relocated to Old Bandera Road. It's a very nice facility. Hope to have you all by there at some point in time. Our staff includes George. Besides George, we have a full-time assistant general manager, Amanda Malukas, who is there most of the time. Emily Green is our administration program manager. And we have a consultant, communication consultant, John Bogus, that we've kind of adopted as part of our regular staff. And really on behalf of myself, our staff, and my fellow board members, I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today and offer you the invitation to reach out to us anytime. We'd be happy to have a future conversation with you.
Thanks, Joe. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Craig, you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Linda?
No.
Bert?
No. Keep up the good work.
Come on, Paul.
I was just gonna, with the drought conditions and the increase of population, how do you plan for all that? Because there's a lot of people moving into the area, and are you supplying water for all these? Are you more residential, commercial?
We're not a water supplier per se. Most of the water that's supplied here in Helotes is through Saws. Saws buys or pumps water from some of their wells are in our Trinity. So Saws buys water from us, and then they provide it.
Yeah,
George may be able to.
we're more of a regulatory entity. You've heard of the Edwards Aquifer Authority?
Mm-hmm.
We have the same powers, but we're about this big compared to being this big.
George, if you would, step up
Yes,
to the
sir.
mic and tell us who you are.
George
speak into the
Wisman,
mic.
I'm the general manager of the Trinity Glen Rose Groundwater Conservation District. So we're a regulatory body created by the state, such as the Edwards, such as the Cap Creek, such as groundwater districts in other counties. So.
Okay, so you're more just a regulatory agency?
Yeah, correct. So we don't provide water. We try to manage that resource to the best of our ability in the Trinity in northern Bexar County.
And do you just monitor for your district, or, obviously it goes up to West Texas. Who's in charge of the big picture?
As Joe talked about the GMAs, groundwater management areas, we work with 9 other groundwater districts in the Hill Country to form a GMA. So we work with that group to plan long term. We plan 50-year horizons on how we want the water in the Trinity to look over that 50-year period.
So you take care of your little piece of the pie, but
Yeah,
you plan with
But
the
then
other
we
guys.
work with the other 8 to plan for a larger, a longer scale.
I had a couple of questions on the slide you had of the wells, the domestic and public. There are a lot of purple dots, which are public water supply wells. What exactly or who has those? What public entity?
The blue dots don't necessarily reflect public water supply wells. The blue dots are the most current data in the Water Development Board's website. The orange dots are previous data that was entered in by hand.
Oh, okay, just
Okay.
says here, public dots, I mean.
I
public dots,
understand,
public water wells.
and that's what a lot of individuals think, and I think it
Okay.
may just be a slight mistake on the slide.
Do you have an approximate number of how many wells there are in the whole reserve?
Oh, no, but I
Just-
could get that information to you, not offhand.
Okay,
Not offhand. And there's a kind of dividing point. Once you get to Scenic Loop Road there, it almost seems anything below that's an Edwards well. Anything north of that might be a Trinity well. So you're not only relying on the Trinity here, you're relying on the Edwards also. So the Edwards kind of outcrops here, and the Trinity is underneath the Edwards. So right here in the Edwards, you're getting spotty bit of water, so anything north, you're drilling through the Edwards and into the Trinity. And we have no jurisdiction over the Edwards, that's the EAA, so our jurisdiction is only over the Trinity aquifer.
okay, and I was just curious, comparing the two, and just looking at the two, Edwards versus Trinity and acre feet. Do you have an approximate number of acre feet in each aquifer?
Yes, we, well, not in the aquifer. There are studies out there that have that information. There are millions of gallons in each aquifer. I think the Edwards, you're allowed to pull out about 450,000 acre feet. In Bexar County, we're allowed to pull out 25,000 acre feet in the Trinity. In the whole of the Hill Country, in those 9 counties, we have a water budget of about 100,000 acre feet. So about 1/4 of what the Edwards is using as a whole. There is a study out there called the TER study that does identify how much water they believe to be in the aquifer, how much water they believe you can remove without issues. So I don't have those numbers on hand.
Okay, no problem.
Sure.
And then I was just curious, as I remember, Joe, you mentioned there's no recharge areas or contributing zones for the Trinity?
There are, but they're smaller. They're much more, not as large as the Edwards. It doesn't recharge the same. It recharges very much slower. It's very fractured. It's very fragmented aquifer. So what you see in Uvalde, when you hear about the Edwards on a nightly basis, the water level is the same here in Bexar County as it is in Uvalde. That's not the same with the Trinity. It may be 200 feet below surface here. On the east side of San Antonio, it may be 500 feet below surface. So it's quite different.
Interesting.
Do y'all have jurisdiction over the recharge zone?
Our boundaries lie northern Bexar County from 1604 to the county line, as Joe said, and 471 to the west and Nacogdoches to the east. We work closely with the Edwards over the recharge zone. We don't permit any of their wells, they don't permit any of our wells, but we collaborate on studies, sharing information. As Joe said, there's an interconnect here in Bexar County between the Edwards and the Trinity, which water moves from the Trinity into the Edwards. So.
Well, it's the same with
And
the
a lot of
Edwards.
our recharge areas can go as far north as Kerrville.
Mhm.
So we don't have, they're not within our boundary, but they're within the GMA 9, so we still have at least some ability to monitor.
And the Cibolo Creek is a great resource for the Trinity and the Edwards. It's basically a recharge point in itself
Ah,
from west to east.
interesting. Okay, any follow-up questions? No? Well, thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thank you.
I've got more questions, but we have more agenda to get to, so I'll get with you.
And we're
Sure.
working with staff currently. I think I have an appointment with Frank, one of your officers, Frank Fontaine,
Yeah,
next week. So we're gonna collaborate on some things coming
Okay.
up.
very good. Thanks again. Joe,
You
good to
bet.
see you as always.
Good to see you.
George, good to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
Sure.
Y'all are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. It's gonna be some exciting stuff.
Exciting. I think I'll get home. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We always lose our audience. Thanks, guys. Be careful out
Thank
there.
you. Be safe.
Okay, next up we have item 8, discussion of an action on a request by David Alvarez for approval of 2 variances, authorizing an increase in size and number on a proposed wall sign for SA Total Tree Service located at 17285 Bandera Road. So if I can get a motion and a second to discuss and take action on this, that would be great.
Mayor, make a motion to discuss, take action on 8.
We have a motion from Bies. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Fredericks. Okay, Bert, it's your motion, so you're up first.
Okay, I agree with the P&Z's recommendation to allow the size increase, and it looks like to me they can recommend up to a 25% increase in size, and that's what they've done. And I agree with also it being outside our city's business corridor, that it's a reasonable reason to allow for the variance. That's all I had.
Okay, Paul?
Well, I'm gonna channel my inner Alex Blue a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I'm for it. Do it.
Well, we just need to be, you know, I know Alex would say, well, you know, this is, yes, it's outside our business corridor, but eventually it probably might be inside our corridor. So we just need to be careful that we're not granting these waivers all the time. So we have, because these signs eventually will be inside the city limits, or maybe possibly at one point in time. But I'm okay with it. I mean, it's not a huge increase, but I'm okay with it. But I think we just need to be careful what we're doing. That's all.
Okay, Linda?
Well, I had asked Selena, like what was the reason that the sign needs to be this big?
Well, proportionally for the building, I'm assuming that they want to have it be able to be seen from the highway. They just chose that size. And typically in the past, the Planning and Zoning and Council have allowed up to 25%, which is by code, larger than the code. And that's what they're actually asking for about 24.8% more than the allowable 50 square feet. But that would be it. Basically, it's just the choice of the owner and the applicant.
Okay, so what's the difference between us allowing that 25% variance and just changing the code to say, well, everything can be 25% bigger?
Because not everyone wants to exceed. That's why it's a variance. So a lot of people come in and their space is adequate and they're happy with that square footage. It's only in cases like this where they may want to go a little higher that the code allows up to 25%.
Okay, so it's already in the code that it can go 25% over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're not changing it. Okay, now I understand.
Okay, great.
So, I got a question. Is Mr. Alvarez or Mr. Benavides online?
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask a question. So I sat through the P&Z meeting, and last week I drove all around the city. Now granted, we're talking about out in the ETJ, but in the city we have, and for a bunch of different reasons, we have kind of dual raceway signs, right? But they seem to be very close to each other. So I wanted to throw this out to Mr. Benavides, Mr. Alvarez. Would it even look like more like one sign if the lower raceway was closer to the top raceway? That seems to be the way we've been doing signs inside the city. And again, I understand this is out in the ETJ, Because that was some comments that I heard at the P&Z meeting was, we all kind of get the look and feel that it is one sign, even though it's two raceways. Is there an architectural or is there a physical reason why you guys didn't consider that?
I'm sorry, the message a little bit, the audio is a little bit garbled to me, but it sounds like you're asking if we can move the raceway closer, or why, or what is the purpose of the raceway?
So what I'm trying to say is I'm drawing a comparison to existing dual raceway type of signs inside the city that have the appearance that it looks more like one sign instead of two. And so I know that was a topic of debate amongst the commission, and it was just a question I had as well. Would it look more like one sign? Is there a physical reason why you spaced the top row from the bottom raceway? Is there a way you can move that up?
You know, the reason it's spaced that way is because it's just visually appealing. Sometimes if you put two objects too close together, you'll get what we call crowding, and some of the message will not be conveyed to the public correctly if it's all too close together. It'll be garbled a little bit.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, and kind of what Linda was talking about, one size doesn't fit all. And so that I understand that's why we have the variances. I spent way too much time on this. I went out and back past that property. And so I think the space and the size of the sign is appropriate based on the speed of traffic that's out here. It's not like you're traveling down through the middle of Helotes at 45 or 40 miles an hour. It's 55 plus. And the business kind of sits on kind of a curve on Highway 16. So you don't get a long look at the sign. So for me, I think it's appropriate, and I'm very supportive of both variances.
Okay. Paul, or Bert, your motion, any follow-up to that?
I still feel the same way.
Paul?
No, I'm fine with it. I mean, it is balanced for the size of the building, so I don't have an issue. I mean, it's appealing, it doesn't stick out, so it's fine. It's, like I said, balanced for the building.
Okay, Linda, any follow-up?
No.
Craig, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we had looked at taking this as actually two separate variance requests because the emails from Ernest to the applicant indicated that technically it was two signs. So the first variance would be whether or not to agree with the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and consider this as one sign rather than two. And if you consider it as one sign rather than two, then a variance would not be required for it. So that would be the one consideration, and the other is for the increase of square footage to about 25% over the allowable. So Bert, if you would, you might consider amending your motion to include the fact that you're considering this as one sign rather than two, which would not require a variance, and that you're giving the variance for the excess size up to 62.4 square feet.
Well, let's go ahead and do that amendment.
Okay,
Make it one sign.
you agree with that?
I will.
You have that language?
Consider one
Okay.
sign.
Okay, so the amended motion is to consider this one sign, therefore no variance required for two, and to allow the 25% increase in size over 50 square feet to 62.4. Okay, that being said, no further discussion being required, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving the variance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Sign is approved as presented. And number 9, we have discussion of an action on a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an interlocal agreement between the city and the city of North Richland Hills, Texas. So if I can have a motion and a second to discuss and take action on 9, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item 9.
I have a motion from Fredericks. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And a second from Sanders. Okay, Paul, you're first up.
What purchasing services are we trying to?
Street.
We'll let Marion address this. Go ahead, Marion.
This would be for street maintenance, for microsurfacing. And so, when we went out and looked at doing bids and so forth, we found an interlocal agreement so that we can actually be able to piggyback off their bid processing. Other cities have done this, so with this interlocal agreement, we're able to utilize the microsurfacing on our street maintenance programs.
Okay. Fantastic.
Got that?
Got it.
I think I got it too. You went pretty fast. But
Sorry.
yeah, it should be clear. Hopefully, if not, we'll clear it up. Craig?
So not a whole lot to discuss other than I had a chance to sit down with Public Works this past week and got to see how those guys and gals, or guys, are actually doing wonderful things. Way more technology, a lot of big thinking going on in our Public Works section, and which is what is driving us to set up these agreements so we can get some of these innovative materials at a cheaper price. Kudos on the folks in Public Works.
And it makes our bidding process a lot simpler, is one of the reasons. Linda?
No, I'm good.
Bert?
Yes, this wouldn't only be just for purchasing road.
No.
No, it'll be anything that they purchase through contracts. Mary, you want to
Right, so
make that clear?
So they actually write their bidding process in which that, when they write it, they say that other cities are able to use the cooperative purchase agreement, and that we can piggyback just kind of like the county does. And so as long as we have an interlocal agreement with them, we can use the low bid process.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting, it is, that we can do this with cities that aren't even close to us. You know, we have one with the county. We don't have one with San Antonio, but this is why we went with the city, because we needed one from the city. Paul, any follow-up?
No.
Craig, anything?
No, sir.
Linda, you still good?
I'm good.
Bert, you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Then we'll call the question. All in favor of approving the ILA, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no, or nay. Okay, motion carries. And by golly, that's going to be the end of our agenda. So if there are no objections to adjourning, we will adjourn. Any objections? None being heard. We're adjourned at 7:42. You like your new iPads?
Yeah.